Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. Yeah, Clash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed. Deep state, fake fed, everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. flash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed. Deep state, fake fed, everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki Show.
Hello and welcome to the Nomiki Show. We have a jam-packed show today. It is Friday, January 7th, the day after the 1-year memoriam of, we got to find some term for this, of the January 6th riots. The terrorist attacks, of course, that occurred on the Capitol. But we're going to start off the show today to talk about the state of Build Back Better and how it affects, it's a very big bill, right? Build Back Better, which is still in limbo, still being held up. The White House is basically not even on speaking terms with Joe Manchin at this point. It's getting a little out of control. That was based on Politico's reporting today. But it is such a big bill. It is such a complicated bill that it's almost been hard to message around because it affects so many different communities. There's so many different parts of it. So we're going to try to lean into this and explain it and break it down for you so you know what you're fighting for, right? We are going to talk about immigration, and I am very excited. Our first guest of the day is Bruna Sollod. Bruna is the Senior Communications and Political Director at United We Dream Action, UWDA, which is a lobbying, advocacy, and electoral politics of course, United We Dream, which is the largest immigrant-led, youth-led community in the country, which is huge. It's a really incredible organization, has been around, fighting for DACA litigation and so much of the movement that came out of the Obama era DACA rulings, and of course SB 1070, et cetera, et cetera. So Bruna, thank you for joining us and giving us a little bit of an update. What's going on with Build Back Better? Where does it stand?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're all wondering that as we start the new year. Well, a couple things happened in 2021, right? We fought really, really hard. Immigrant young people, allies, took to the streets in the middle of a pandemic to fight to include immigration and Build Back Better. We were successful in a lot of ways. We were able to ensure that the House version of Build Back Better included immigration protections. That's protections for things like that protect me. Right now, I'm a DACA recipient. I'm protected from deportation. I have a work permit. I'm able to have health care. I'm able to have a driver's license. Those seem like simple things, but they're not, right? They allow me to live my life. And so we were successful in pushing the House to do that. However, because of really arcane and honestly, I'll say unhelpful rules in the Senate, there's someone called a parliamentarian, and she is an unelected advisor that gives advice to members of Congress. And she unfortunately has, I think, gone beyond the scope of her work and advised senators not to include citizenship in the Senate version of Build Back Better. We think that that's the wrong decision. We're firm in that belief. And at the end of December, we were very clear with Democrats that they needed to disregard the parliamentarian. This has happened in the past. Republicans, when they had control of the Senate back in the Bush years, they disregarded the parliamentarian. It's just an opinion. It's not a ruling. And so we've been very clear. Democrats hold the power here to put what they want in the bill and to pass it. And we think it's really important for immigrants to be included in Build Back Better. You can't exclude millions of people from this big of a package.
Well, what I don't understand why this is not an easier issue for Democrats to fight for. This is 20, 30 years ago when you had the first border wall conversation, in the late 90s, right? Against a Clinton White House, you had more conservative Democrats on the issue of immigration. And then the Republicans pivoted in the 2000s, the Bush type of Republicans, into being more sensitive and empathetic to the rights of immigrants, whether undocumented or not. They were at least trying to address these issues in a bipartisan way. And so, now it's like those who are still pushing this myth of, fears of the border. Obviously, we have an administration that still is dealing with issues at the border specifically. it's coming from the far right. And so in terms of like where the political spectrum is when it comes to everything related to immigration, I just don't understand how Democrats in the Senate in particular, who really are not going to lose much, it's not like they're up for election every 2 years, I don't understand why this is a risk. This doesn't seem like a political risk. Most Americans support this. I don't understand. What is their justification?
Well, let's talk about Republicans for a little bit, because I think you bring up a good point in the shift that has happened to the Republican Party. In 2008 and 2013, you had Republican senators like Marco Rubio from, my home state of Florida. You had Lindsey Graham, who were pro-immigration bills. They were pro-citizenship. Mm-hmm. They were pro things like the DREAM Act and protecting immigrant young people. Immigrant young people have always had the support of both parties. We've never been beholden to a party. I think we've been really good at messaging and making the case that like we needed to be protected. But then you had Trump. Trump began his campaign the day he announced his presidential, putting immigrants on the line and saying, like, I'm going to go after immigrants. And I think that has completely switched his whole party to be very racist and anti-immigrant. And then we've completely lost, the Republicans won't even talk about, not even DACA, but they won't talk about citizenship. They won't talk about anything, things that they supported. You have Marco Rubio now saying he doesn't support citizenship. He represents a state with millions of undocumented immigrants, right? So it's kind of outrageous where the Republican is. And I think it's important to note that they're not coming to the table. And so we've been very clear that our pressure has always been on Democrats. I don't think it's a question about, is it popular? We have the data that, like you said, Americans support it. They want to see it. They believe in citizenship. We have huge popularity of DACA and the DREAM Act and all of those things that we've been fighting for years. It's more of a question of like moral and political will. Like, do Democrats have what they need to do this year? And it's not just immigration, it's Build Back Better in general. I often ask myself, like, what are they expecting to go to voters in the midterms? What are they going to tell voters that they did this year? And look, as an immigrant myself, I care about citizenship. I deserve citizenship. But I'm also worried about other things in Build Back Better, the climate provisions that are so important for the future of our country. I'm worried about voting rights. January 6th, we just marked it yesterday, a year. Nothing has been done on the side of Democrats to protect our democracy. I left a country whose democracy was on the brink, and now I'm in another country where our democracy is on the brink again. And I think it's really important for us to understand that, like, it's not just immigration. It's all of these key issues that all people care about that would benefit us all, right? Healthcare provisions, parental leave, like all of these things that are really, really popular with the voters. And Democrats have to deliver in order to make the case for why they should continue to be in power beyond 2022.
I mean, it is jarring to me because we've seen the photos of so many Democratic leaders and people who are thinking about running for president and did run for president go to the border, call out the humanitarian crisis at the border under Donald Trump, called out the Muslim ban, and yet once they took office, in some ways, I mean, with Kamala Harris in particular, going down to Guatemala and standing up next to someone who's an authoritarian light elected, leader of Guatemala, but very Trumpian, and saying, stay home. It's just, it's not even just that it's tone deaf. How can you be on tone, right? How can you have an ear for what's happening under the Trump administration, but suddenly once you're in power, you're tone deaf? And I want to believe that there is some other thing that's that they are doing whatever they can to address the border crisis. I do believe that, but the way that they're handling it and messaging it makes me feel like this is an administration and the leadership of the Democratic Party is just like pretend it doesn't exist, and it doesn't exist, even if they are working with it. But when you don't actually address the issue, it makes it harder to fight as an activist, right? Like you guys, for issues that are life or death in the BBB. So all these things are connected is essentially what I'm saying. And if you're not going to take a stand on one of these issues that you were vocally against, 4 years ago, then how do we know you're going to stand with us on issues that are in your existing bill?
Right. I think the thing about immigrant young people, I'll say, Nomiki, is that we're really resilient. I was thinking back to my life in the US. I've lived here 22 years. I've been told no a lot of times, right? When I was in high school, I was told I wouldn't go to college because I was undocumented. When I was in college and had DACA, I was told I wasn't going to get a job. Under the Trump years, we were told we were going to lose DACA. And we fought all the way to the Supreme Court, and we won in 2020 when everyone told us we wouldn't be able to do it. We took to the streets when children were being ripped from the arms of their parents with other millions of American citizens. We really believe in the discipline of hope, right? Our parents sacrificed so much to give us a better life, to migrate to this country under horrendous conditions. And we really believe in a future where all people can live and thrive, no matter your immigration status, no matter the color of your skin, no matter who you love, all of these things. That's the future we believe in. And we believe we have to get there, and that there's a lot of changes to our democracy that have to happen in order for us to get there. And so I think for me, what's sitting with me is like, this is not just about immigrant justice, but the bigger picture is racial justice. Yes. And the fact of the matter is that immigration is a racial justice issue, because the folks that are migrating here and the folks that are here without citizenship are mostly Black and brown, right, and low income, right? And so that's a fight we have to do together. We can't keep fighting on these separate issues. It can't just be, we're fighting here for immigration, climate change here, voting rights here. We as a movement, a progressive movement, have to be really united in the fight ahead, because it's not just about 2022. We are potentially could see Trump run again in 2024. And what would that mean for our people, the people that were marginalized under Trump? It was Black and brown people who suffered the most under a Trump administration. And so my hope, and the hope that immigrant young people have, because we're not giving up. Like I said, we've been told no. The parliamentarian told us no 3 times. We're not taking it. We're going to go and continue pushing for it. I think the Democrats should really look at us, young people, Black and brown people who've been taken to the streets, borrow courage from us, you know, get inspired by what people have been doing, get inspired by the people in Georgia who on January 5th, 2021, gave you a majority in the Senate, right? Get inspired by those people. Stop chasing moderate voters. Stop chasing Republican voters who are never going to come back to your party. Like, follow the leadership of the people, the voters that put you in power. Follow the leadership of young people who are fighting for these issues so that we can have a better country for our generation and future generations. That's who the Democrats need to be listening to and need to be fighting for. That's the future of our country. And so I haven't lost hope. We are going to keep fighting. We have actions coming up in the next few weeks. We are, you know, doing everything we can to not let Democrats just walk away. We're not going to allow them to say like, well, sorry, Manchin didn't let us pass Build Back Better. It is what it is. Like, we're not taking that. I also want to share that, like, the people of West Virginia want the same things I want in New Jersey, the same things people want in Florida, the same things want in California. Like, let's stop acting like Joe Manchin lives in a state where his people that he represents don't care about the things that are in Build Back Better. That's false. And so I think it's on Democrats to be given the power that they were given and actually show us what it means to be an elected official. You should be fighting for this every day. Why are they on vacation right now still? Why are they not in session? We're all working. You should be working too, right?
And they keep telling everybody to go back to work. On top of it all, it's like, you're not even back to work.
Right.
Come
so
on.
It's like, yeah, exactly. And I think, look, you'll see our young people aren't giving up. When I look at Gen Z, you know, I'm a millennial, but I look at our Gen Z members and I'm like, God, I'm so inspired by like the tenacity they have and the clear vision they have for the future. And we're not giving up, and we're going to continue to fight, whether, you know, folks at United We Dream Action, we're going to be working with Sunrise. We're going to be working with all the folks that like the progressive movement that are actually fighting for a better vision for our country. And look, I think hopefully some good things will happen this year. But I know that at the end of the day, we're the leaders of the next generation of this country. And so that makes me feel really hopeful.
You know, the other thing about this, just to go back to the point about Republicans, is this is if it's going to be about, you know, the bottom line and what's, you know, what does Joe Manchin speak to? This is something that the business community supports. I mean, multiple, whether it's tech companies who rely on immigrants, you know, they overwhelmingly so, you know, this is Mark Zuckerberg made it an issue of his at one point. You know, he's a little tied up on other things right now, but politically, he at least was willing to make that stand. And so many other leaders in business understood that having a pathway to citizenship is good for business. So I think at the end of the day, you're right. It is about Black and brown people. And you have a bunch of racists, I'll say it, who are dictating the terms of what moves forward under the guise of it's something that like, is pro-business or whatever, but it's not. I mean, everybody sees that this is good for America. It's always been good for America. The number, one group of individuals that are entrepreneurs are immigrants, and that's good for the economy. You know that. So I think if we're to look at the map right now, okay, so you have Joe Manchin, who's the obvious one, but what other lawmakers are really dragging their feet on the Democratic side that we could, hold their feet to the fire and help you out?
I mean, I think, when you look at a state like Arizona and Senator,
Sinema.
Kristen Sinema, I think she's someone that if you look at, she was elected by a lot of Latino voters in Arizona. They put her in power. She, I've heard stories of her going to marches in Arizona and supporting immigrants' rights. And I know she supported a lot of other issues that are part of Build Back Better. And she has, not been eager to move on it. Now she has all of these different stipulations that she wants. And I know a lot of attention has been on Manchin these last few weeks, but I do think she's someone that has to continue to be pressured and to continue to be reminded, like, these were the issues that that the voters elected you on.
Literally in Arizona. Yeah,
exactly. These are the things. These are the people that you represent. You don't represent Republicans, moderate Republicans. They didn't vote for you. Like, working class people, Black and brown, Latino, young people voted for you. They put you in power. These were the things you told us, you told the voters you cared about. These are the things that we want you to do now. So I definitely think that she's someone who a lot of her constituents will continue to pressure. And I think when we're thinking about the future, we really have to think about, like, who are the people we want in these elected seats? Like, what kind of people do we want? And so I think if you're an American citizen and you're thinking like, oh my gosh, like this person doesn't represent me, think about running. Like, what is that? We should have more working class people be able to run to represent our communities. I think that's really, really important because it does make a huge difference. When you look at some of the local and state officials who have an immigrant background or who are Latinx, or they push for things that are going to make their communities better. And I think more of the American citizens need to think about that. Like, who are the folks in your own neighborhood who make a big difference? I mean, under COVID, that has been a huge thing, right? Just like my ability to go get a COVID test is impacted by my mayor in Jersey City, right? So me knowing my mayor and being able to push my mayor to do things, those are things that are really important. So local politics, I think, Republicans are good at this too. They're really good at getting in power in these local and state seats. And I think that the progressive movement needs to, be pushing for that as well, because we really want to have people who, when they're in power, they're representing their constituents, not wealthy donors, not major corporations.
Bruna, music to my ears. So if you hear that, guys, run. Don't wait for someone to ask you. Don't wait for, some organization to recruit you. Running for local office is much, much more achievable than these bigger, congressional seats. Also important, but, school boards, city councils, town councils, state senate, assembly, state reps. That's where the action's happening right now. And the Democrats have clearly taken their eye off of local politics. So, let's not wait for them. We have to, this impacts our lives. And Senator Sinema was part of the legislature in Arizona, and she was a very different type of legislator when she joined, as many people note. But she understands power because she worked her way through power and knows how the levers work. But we can also do that. That's not something that's unique to centrists and pro-business Republicans. Bruna, thank you so much for joining us. Bruna Sollod, go check out UWDA and the work that they're doing. Support in whatever capacity you can. We'd love to have you back on. United We Dream Action is the political side of United We Dream. And Bruna, just keep up the amazing fight and let us know how things go. Keep supporting you.
Thank you.
Guys, it is a new year and many resolutions are on my bucket list for the year. I have been really intentional about my health and wellness lately, as I'm sure many others have. That also includes sleep. I am a notoriously horrible sleeper. I don't know if notorious. I talk about it. Not like everyone knows that. I wear one of these little apps, these devices on my wrist to monitor my sleep and my steps. But one thing that I've noticed, because you can measure it, is that when I take Sunset Lake CBD, I do the tincture before I go to bed, especially the one with melatonin now, because they have the combination. The melatonin helps you go to sleep. The CBD helps me stay asleep. And I have delicious dreams also. Just they can't monitor that, but I always wake up and I'm like, keep it going. This is such a lovely dream. And then I forget about it, obviously. But Sunset Lake CBD has been so transformative in my life and so many other friends and family members as well. It is a farmer-owned company that ships craft CBD products directly from their farm in Vermont to your door. They have all types of products. They have salves and coffee. So you wake up, but you don't get jittery. My mom loves that. There are gummies, which are delicious, except I take all of them at once, so don't do that. There are tinctures. There are salves and lotions. They're an incredible company, and everything that you're doing when you support them is supporting rural communities and a good company that supports their workers. The employees of Sunset Lake CBD own the majority of the company, and their minimum wage is $15 an hour. And on top of all that, they support shows like our show and the Majority Report and the David Pakman Show. Really a lovely company. Sam has just been incredible with us in supporting our show from the beginning. So when I say I love a product, I can't lie. There's no other way of saying it. I do like use everything I can, and so do my family members. So you too can be an advocate of Sunset Lake CBD. Go to sunsetlakecbd.com and you will get 20% off of your entire order if you type in Nomi, Nomi, sunsetlakecbd.com and type in Nomi, and you will get 20% off of your entire order. Definitely great for the new year. Always doing deals. Make sure to sign up. They have a newsletter. They have sales all the time. And again, just the best CBD product I've ever used. Probably the only one that I've actually liked. So I highly recommend. All right, we will be right back with Kate Briquelet to talk about the Ghislaine Maxwell case. I know I'm getting your messages, people. I know you want to know more because, the media is not covering it enough or in depth enough. Well, we have Kate Briquelet, a friend of the show, for a while, I guess now. She's going to give us the updates. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to the Nomiki Show. I know you guys have been asking for it. We are starting off the new year, covering one of those cases that everybody's talking about, Ghislaine Maxwell. Kate Briquelet is a senior reporter with the Daily Beast. She has covered crime and corruption for the Daily Beast, and she's also appeared in many documentaries, I've noticed. What was the one? I watched the Epstein one recently, and she popped up, and I was like, oh, it's Kate. Love it. She's been on 48 Hours, American Greed, Dateline. You have, if I can say so, the sexiest reporting gig.
Wow, thank you.
It's fun. It's fascinating. It's covering, powerful people and corruption, and this trial must be... is there ever a boring day in the trial?
There wasn't. Every day of this trial brought something new, some bombshell or piece of the puzzle. And so this was an exciting one to cover. I think a lot of us are shocked it's over now. And as I'm sure you've read, a little over a week later, the saga continues.
Okay, so without bearing the lead, the state of the trial, there's some news about there potentially being a mistrial. So let's start with that and then kind of rewind if we can about what the convictions were. So what happened last week?
So soon after the trial wrapped up, a juror has gone on sort of a media tour describing what it was like during the negotiations and how his personal experience basically persuaded some of the jurors who were skeptical of the victims to come to the other side. So now some people believe that the verdict is in jeopardy. And because this juror did not mention on his jury questionnaire that he had a past history of sexual abuse, that he had experienced sexual abuse himself. You know, at jury selection, the reporters that were there, including myself, we saw quite a few people who had answered that question be dismissed from the jury. And so if you're Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team, you're going to argue, hey, this guy never said he had experienced sexual abuse in the past. Now he's coming forward in media interviews saying that he did so. You know, does this mean that Ghislaine got an unfair trial at this point? Does it mean that if he wasn't on the jury, that she might have been acquitted? That's what they're arguing. And I think we're kind of surprised also that they're arguing for a retrial. I mean, if you were Ghislaine, would you want to risk it all over again? Some of the victims' lawyers that I've spoken to have said, you know, fine, if there's a retrial, there's probably going to be more witnesses lined up against her, that they know of other people who've since come forward since the verdict who said, I will testify against Ghislaine. So it's funny that she would want to risk a retrial, but that might be all she has. Or perhaps they're going to use this juror's comments as ammo as part of their appeal. I mean, as soon as the verdict came down, you know, hours later, Ghislaine's lawyer, Bobby Sternheim, came outside, wished everybody a happy new year, said she was disappointed with the verdict, but that they were currently working on the appeal. So what's next in this case? I don't know. I think the jurors' comments and, you know, legal experts saying that this puts the verdict in jeopardy, it's just another twist in this whole case.
I mean, I was talking about this with David, our producer, earlier today. So let's pretend, and I understand you're not a legal expert, you're reporting on this, but I'm curious if this kind of argument has brought up. So it's one thing to not disclose that you are a sexual assault survivor, and from what I understand, there may have been others on the jury who also did not. But another thing I was thinking was, okay, so say there is a case in which there was sexual harassment in the workplace, right? And the person that was being prosecuted for some, sexual harassment situation, if you're a woman who has worked in the world and you're asked that question, what are you going to take that person off of the jury? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So why is it that this one situation can inform and others are not? Like, how do they decide which questions could potentially affect a jury's mindset?
Well, you know, all of the prospective jurors had to fill out a jury questionnaire. And the question said, have you or a family member or a friend experienced sexual abuse, assault, harassment? And then there were some follow-up questions that said, would this impact your ability to be impartial in the case? And according to reports, we don't know exactly what's happened yet. There hasn't been an inquiry, but this guy reportedly checked no. And then during jury deliberations came forward to say, you know, I experienced childhood sexual abuse. So there's questions as to whether he would even be on the jury if he would have checked yes and answered truthfully, right? There's a chance the judge might not have dismissed him, but later on, the prosecutors and the defense have the chance to strike jurors, you know, in what's known as peremptory strikes. So they would have a shot at getting him off the jury had they known that he had experienced sexual assault before. And I guess there's questions as to whether that impacted his ability to be a partial juror in this case. I mean, we don't know. I mean, it's not to say that if you experience sexual abuse that you can't be a juror in a sexual abuse case, but there's just questions as to whether or not he was an impartial juror in this matter.
What was she convicted of, and what did they? And also, you know, with that being said, what was her defense?
Well, Ghislaine was convicted on 5 of 6 charges related to child sex trafficking, most notably sex trafficking conspiracy. The one charge she was not convicted of was enticing a minor to travel for illegal sexual activity. I think the jury just took issue with the word enticement and whether or not she enticed them, whether she persuaded them, whether she coerced them. It just wasn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And if I remember correctly, that charge related specifically to just one victim, Jane. So Ghislaine's argument this entire time has been that she's a scapegoat. She's a stand-in for Jeffrey Epstein. She had nothing to do with his crimes. You know, Ghislaine's lawyer came out swinging in opening arguments saying that she's being blamed for the behavior of bad men. You know, ever since Eve tempted Adam with the apple, women have been blamed for the bad behavior of men. That's precisely what her attorney told jurors in opening statements. So her argument is, I didn't have anything to do with this. I was his employee. I, you know, took care of his homes, etc. I did not take part in the sexual abuse or facilitate the sexual abuse of underage girls. Of course, the prosecution argued, you were involved in virtually every detail of Jeffrey Epstein's life. How could you not know that this was going on? And not only that, you helped him abuse underage girls.
She was an employee of his, but they were also in a relationship. And then when did they did stop talking at one point, like pretty far back, right?
Well, yes, I guess their relationship started out romantic, and prosecutors made a point of showing that with all of those photos that just flashed on the screen just now, all of their sort of happier days photographs, them kissing, hugging, Ghislaine giving him a foot massage. They were close. They were, you know, thick as thieves, some would say. And eventually the romance faded and she became his employee, which is obviously unusual, but the prosecution argued they were extremely close. Ghislaine says that she left his life, you know, I think sometime in the mid 2000s. So it's unclear, but in some of the court records that were released as part of the victim Virginia Giuffre's defamation suit against Ghislaine, it was clear they were at least in email contact in recent years. So who knows how close they were, you know, up until the point that he was arrested.
Okay, now this is the part where I think folks who are watching this trial are really interested in knowing is, are we ever going to potentially learn through who knows what channels who some of these folks were that could have, I mean, we know about Prince Andrew and of course, you know, there's Trump, but are the details going to come out beyond the black book? Are there going to be more experiences shared, more folks who come forward? Is there any sort of sense of that right now?
Sure. When you speak to victims and victims' lawyers, they're arguing this can't be the end. The case can't end with Ghislaine. Perhaps this is just the beginning, right? People were hopeful that Ghislaine would try to make some sort of deal and cough up dirt on some of these powerful men, including Prince Andrew, who's been a longtime friend of hers, or some political players like Bill Clinton or Donald Trump, who were part of Epstein's inner circle. And I'm not suggesting that they were involved in any of the sexual misconduct, but there were many powerful people that were involved with Epstein, whether financially or perhaps, as it's been alleged, have taken part in the sexual abuse too. So I don't think that this case is over. I think there's more to come. The victims are certainly rallying for prosecutors to target other people and perhaps lean on them to collaborate and cooperate. So yeah, we'll see what happens next. I guess we have to also get through Ghislaine's appeal process, but I think victims are hopeful that more charges will come down.
Let's talk about the money a little bit, because it's been very confusing for I think a lot of folks to understand where the money was coming from. I mean, we've read reports, and I think you report on this quite a bit, about how Epstein's money just was suddenly he was wealthy, and you know, were they using fronts to move money? Like, was this an actual operation that was being financed? I guess, like, we're just trying to figure out structure. Like, how did this operate? Was the goal to be a sex trafficking group financed through some other entities? Was there some sort of foreign aspect here? I mean, there have been a lot of conversations about him potentially working for a foreign government, collecting information on leaders and powerful, you know, business leaders as well. Do we have any sense of how this enterprise worked?
You know, we only know what we see now, and that's the tip of the iceberg. I think this is one of the most enduring mysteries of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, is where did his money come from? We know that Limited Brands chairman, Victoria's Secret honcho, Les Wexner, had basically given Epstein a massive portion of his wealth and transferred the title to his property in Manhattan, his Manhattan townhouse to him. You know, and Les Wexner was Epstein's only known client for a while. Most recently, we're hearing about billionaire Leon Black paying Epstein millions and millions of dollars, and allegedly for financial services, right? So if these two powerful billionaires are leaning on Epstein for financial services, there must be more people out there. I think the sex trafficking is only one part of what Epstein was doing. So the finances are still a big mystery. I think people were hoping some of that stuff would be revealed at Maxwell's trial, but it wasn't. So people who were hoping to learn more about the vast conspiracy and the finances were disappointed, right? I think that this is a mystery that still needs to be unsolved. Perhaps it will be through civil suits. Perhaps prosecutors are exploring this angle. I mean, there's been questions about the fact that, well, the U.S. Attorney's Office Public Corruption Unit has been handling this case. Are public officials complicit here? Is there more to this story? And we think so. Perhaps prosecutors are taking this one defendant at a time. We don't know.
And in terms of foreign aspects, what are people, what's been floated out there in terms of, I know that Maxwell's father, you know, he had his own backstory when it came to the Israeli government. Does that overlap with this?
You know, I can't say this definitively. I just know there's been rumors swirling about perhaps Epstein and Maxwell being involved with Israeli intelligence. There's also been things floating out there about Epstein being involved with the CIA. One of Epstein's former bodyguards and drivers had said that he actually was sent to CIA headquarters to drop off or pick up a book or something. And that was a strange story. I think that was detailed in one of the victim's lawyer's books, Brad Edwards' book. He said that this man was sent to CIA headquarters for something, which is pretty unusual. There are questions as to how well connected Epstein was and if that branched into the intelligence world. And we don't know yet. I'm
so curious what the book was. Do you know?
Brad Edwards' book.
No, the book that they picked up at the.
The book that they picked up. I don't know. Yeah, that was not elaborated on. But you know, this former employee of Epstein was terrified of him, and
I understand.
Right, and if you try to contact him now, I mean, he will not talk to you. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He basically has said, "Be careful of these people." So,
wow.
I think that's.
How are you feeling? As a reporter who's been covering this, I mean, and there's like a whole other story about the people who are in the courtroom too. I mean, you've been covering this. Have you been in the courtroom the whole time?
Well, because of COVID, there are very few courtroom seats. I did get into the courtroom one day, but the rest of us, a large portion of the press and public, were watching this from overflow rooms on a video screen, which was interesting because you can actually see Maxwell at her table as opposed to, you know, a view behind her. It certainly has been a wild ride. Every day Ghislaine came to court, she was very huggy and handsy with her lawyers, very affectionate with her lawyers. And they truly believe that she's innocent and are standing by her.
Wow. Okay, last question. Because there's just so much here. What was the deal with her sketching the sketch artist? This is insane. What does she do? Is this like a psychological game?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that. I think it feels like a psychological game to some of us. You would think she wouldn't be very bored sitting in the hot seat when her life is on the line, right? It feels like a psychological power play, but who knows? I had also read a report that her family had hired some other courtroom sketch artists to paint her in a more flattering light. I don't know if that's true. But yeah, this trial seemed to have a lot of stories about this courtroom sketch artist, and who knows why Ghislaine was drawing these people, but hopefully we won't have to find out in a retrial. Hopefully, right. We're nearing the end of this particular case and moving on to some other ones.
And she's on suicide watch right now. Is that a real thing?
She's been on suicide watch as far as I know from the moment she entered the prison, which is why she's complained about her conditions behind bars, saying that it's been invasive. She's said some serious things. She hasn't had decent food. Her food has had maggots in it. They're shining flashlights in her eyes, every 15 minutes. She can't sleep. There was a photo, I don't know if you remember earlier this year, that they released, and it showed her having sort of a black eye in jail. And they suggested perhaps it's because she has to shield her eyes from the light. So, according to her, because Epstein killed himself in prison, they're handling her, much more severely and keeping this invasive eye on her to make sure she doesn't do anything.
Really interesting. Kate, yeah, you've got many years of this work. There's a whole cottage industry that's formed outside of their, industry, whatever that industry really is. Yeah. I can't wait to read your books. I'm assuming that you're going to have some amazing book that comes out of this.
Right. We'll see where the saga goes next. We're definitely not done with this story. We're not done with Ghislaine Maxwell yet. We're not done with any of the other people that were connected to Epstein. So to be continued. To be continued.
Kate Briquelet, thank you so much, and stay warm. I know it's snowing. You. I'm not in New York right now. If folks can't tell.
Well,
but stay
enjoy.
Warm. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. All right, we will be right back with our incredible panel. Hello. All right. I don't know if you guys know, but Matriarch organization is focused right now, hyper-focused on taking out these insane right-wingers who are saying that they're going to be running for school boards and for town councils. They're not just any right-wingers. They're Proud Boys. They have announced proudly that they are going to take on whoever locally and take over your local government. So Matriarch has enhanced its strategy for 2022. Matriarch is going to be supporting working class women, but not only just supporting them and endorsing them and helping financially, but Matriarch's now doing a series of trainings and making them as accessible as possible for anybody who is currently running for office, any woman, working woman who is currently running for office, thinking about running for office, or in office. Because the issues that you face when you're a working woman running are very different than a well-funded, frankly, male candidate, but also a woman. The issues are, institutional problems. There are a lot of roadblocks along the way, financial roadblocks, political roadblocks along the way, if you do not have access to wealth. So we are doing this training to help working women who represent their communities the best, who we need in office, because as we see in Washington in particular right now, they're not really practicing what they preach. They say that they're supporting frontline workers, but how's that going right now? You don't get any more checks. You don't get any rental support. Cori Bush, one of our founding members, she went in and on day one demanded that the Capitol Hill rioters be held accountable, and she's still demanding that. She has called for rent relief and brought the protest to the steps of the Capitol. That is the type of leadership we need in every school board, in every city council, town council, state senate, the legislatures, because that's what the Republicans do so well. They are part of a 40-year experiment to invest locally, while the Democrats have, of course, pulled back. But we don't need to rely on the Democrats. Frankly, if you're thinking about running, you don't need to rely on anybody. It is much more accessible to run locally than we're told to believe. And we're going to help you. So if you haven't, if you haven't made a decision up, no problem. We're doing a free training January 29th this month. You can sign up on Matriarch's site. If you click on the candidate training badge right there on the right hand, if you're looking at the website right now, matriarchpac.com for our podcast listeners. When you click on that, you can sign up, fill out a form, tell us what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what you're interested in running, and a little bit about your backstory, and we'll send you an invite to this training. It's going to be super exciting. We have incredible leaders and speakers that are going to be at the training, and just go sign up right now. We're taking we're taking those invites. We're taking those signups right now. All right, everybody, we'll be right back with our panel. Hello. Welcome back. We are excited because it's Femme Friday. Did I mention that? I don't know if I mentioned that yet. It's Femme Friday, January 7th, our first Femme Friday of the year. And I could not be more happy than to have some of our favorite guests. Francesca Fiorentini, she's the host of the Bitchuation Room podcast. And she was, of course, at News Broke on AJ Plus.
How's it going, homie?
Great. How are you?
I'm okay. Happy New Year. Thanks.
My purple sister.
We can't wear lipstick anymore because masks have canceled lipstick. So I'm a pro indoor lipstick user and wearer.
Look at my mask right now because I always have it's coated in makeup because I put my mask on after a show. It's not like I wear this makeup out there. Yeah. I'm going to welcome Janelle. We have Janelle Jolley on, who is the host of What's Left to Do, which I've been on, and it was so fun. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Hey, Happy New Year, everyone.
Hi, Janelle.
Hey,
Happy New Year. Thanks for getting up early because you're both LA based. Appreciate it. All right. We have a lot of stuff happening right now. I'm going to start off with some good stuff, and then we'll get to the end of society stuff. So you may have heard that Starbucks workers in Buffalo, of course, unionized, and it could lead to many more Starbucks unionizing around the country. I grew up literally in this area and used to go to these Starbucks when I was a kid and drink frappuccinos and study for my biology exams. So solidarity with these workers that are really paving the way and saying, it's not enough to offer insurance. You actually have to treat us better. Well, guess what? They walked out in Buffalo because there are safety issues dealing with COVID. And these employees at a Starbucks in Western New York, I have to edit that because the Associated Press does not understand Buffalo is not upstate, it's Western. They voted to unionize last month. They are saying that staff has not been provided with the resources to work safely amid, of course, surging COVID-19. I'm glad on one hand that people are starting to understand how workplace safety is tied into labor. It's not just increased pay means your Starbucks is going to be more expensive. Let's do a temperature check here. How are we feeling about the labor movement? Let's start with Fran.
I'm feeling really good about it. I think we need more. I think, we on the left are so excited to be like, this is it. The class war is on tomorrow. Capitalism crumbles. No, it's going to be a lot slower than that. And folks have to get involved and find ways to support locally. But when Starbucks falls and Amazon is shaking, look out. So this is exactly why you have a union, is so that you can say, no, we cannot safely work right now. If we are to work, we're going to need a lot more guarantees. We got HEPA filters in there. Do we have hazard pay? What's it looking like? What are the conditions of work? It's not, oh, hey, the CDC is you should go back to work. I'm not going to give up my shift. No, that's BS. So I feel hopeful for it, but I also know it is going to be a long slog, and we can't sort of lull ourselves into thinking that this is an inevitable movement. Labor movement's been on its back heels for a long time, so it's going to require some work.
Janelle, I want to hear your temperature check, but one thing that I was really surprised to see recently was that we all thought Striketober, which is continuing on, was this thing that was just so inspiring, and like the labor movement's back because of it. But turns out it's actually just as many strikes as there have been in recent years. It's just now people are reporting on it.
That's
They
right.
didn't have labor reporters reporting
That's
on
right.
them.
That's right.
But Janelle, what's your temperature check? Let's
I put it in my veins every time I see a story like this. I my eyes roll in the back of my head in ecstasy. Like, please get out of here. I'm harkening back to an interview I did with Alex Press of Jacobin magazine when I was asking her to kind of summarize the moment we're in with labor vis-a-vis Striketober and all of these other shows of labor militancy. And what she was saying was, throughout the pandemic, the fact that essential workers, what we used to call them essential workers, are more clear than ever that their boss, their job is very willing to sacrifice them in the gristmill of capitalism, and that will directly change how you relate to your job and your boss. And I think that in a weird way, the pandemic was one of the best things that could have happened to the labor movement, because it brought home clearly that these people are not your friends, and they'll subject you to whatever conditions that they want to keep the bottom line. So every time I see a story like this, or I live in San Francisco, the teachers staged a sick out yesterday because the district wasn't listening to their demands about safely reopening the schools during the surge. So every kind of baby step to what Francesca was saying, every baby step to a more organized, demanding, militant labor show of labor, I couldn't get enough of. But I expect to see more of this in 2022 as Omicron continues to go nuts. We got the new Bonjour variant out of fucking France. That's, who knows how bad that's going to be. But as long as
seems so friendly, guys. Bonjour. And French are not known for being so friendly.
That's right. But I expect to see more of this in many different sectors, and I think it's a great sign, especially especially since we're in a midterm year. I think that these can be spotlighted during midterm races to hopefully push liberal candidates more left and pay attention to the demands of labor. So.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. It was a great segue because I live in New York, and we're just so blessed to have a new mayor who, in a lowest turnout election, got a small percentage, but beat out everybody else in our new ranked choice voting. And he thinks it was a mandate by the people of New York to bring back conservatism. And yes. Okay, Mayor Adams. Ooh, I have to say that. I have to get used to that.
That guy's such a clown. God bless. Oof.
I know. People give so much hate to de Blasio, and granted, there were some things I was really not happy about, but my God, let's just be real. Lowest crime rates in the history of New York, if you want to talk about crime. And, income inequality was staggering. He was too beholden to real estate and the police unions, of course. But, he did a tremendous amount to alleviate poverty in the city. And the guy is like, I once followed him around for a day, and he ate his spanakopita with his knife upside down when he cut it. So like, there's something that's a little off about him, but generally speaking,
is that on the lines it's like Klobuchar, using a comb to eat her salad, like at that level. Gross. There's something weird about politicians and their utensils. It's like a sign. But anyway, still.
I can't believe that they're not more in touch with the people when they don't even know what utensils. It's like the cost of milk used to be a thing. Now it's like, you use a comb to eat a salad. Or...
Yeah. Calm down. Let's get forks right first, then we can move on.
Oh my God.
All right.
Yeah.
So Eric Adams toned down.
He's also very New York. Sorry. Not New York, very New York. But he's like if the song New York by Jay-Z and Alicia Keys, like if someone listened to that too much, and then they were just like constantly walking around with like weird swagger, and and with no reason.
Yeah.
Let's play this clip because he's been in office
I want
for
my
barely a week, and and this is the guy. Wait, just a reminder. Sorry, I could talk about this all day long. I love New York politics when it goes really crazy. This is a guy who ran pro-union and made a point of, more so than probably a lot of the other candidates, of saying, I'm with the workers. He's a former Republican cop, don't forget. But
Right.
let's play this clip because out of touch much.
and I'm still getting my salary, then you are not helping those New Yorkers that need us to come in. So I want my businesses in this city to come up with a closer deadline and say we're going to start placing our toe back in the water, come in for 2 days for 3 days, and then let's get this city back up and operating.
But to say we're just going to revisit this in April, that's too long for you.
It is, January, February, March, April, 4 months of not having this business patronized, not having a restaurant patronized, not having business travelers come here to the city to go to our hotels. That is going to be devastating for our economy. And I don't know if my businesses are sharing with their employees. You are part of the ecosystem of this city. My low-skilled workers, my cooks, my dishwashers, my messengers, my shoe shine people, those who work in Dunkin' Donuts, they don't have the academic skills to sit in a corner office. They need this. We are in this together. And we should be saying to ourselves, if I remotely do my job, then that stock clerk is not going to be able to have the business he deserves. That's what I need us to understand. This is not a separate thing. To get through this, we have to get through this together. I need them to shorten the span.
Okay. So my favorite tweet on this was, these comments were so batshit crazy that we didn't even comment on that sweatshirt. His sweatshirt is a little
busy.
I just had to get that out of the way because a lot happened.
Yeah,
it's
it's like some Saved by the Bell. Like if COVID-19 happened during Saved by the Bell, someone like Screech comes to school.
That's right.
He's like, everyone gotta participate. You're like, whoa, Screech.
Over.
Yeah.
Start with.
Doing too much.
Let's get down to it here. All right, Janelle, you lived in New York. How you feel about this guy?
Yeah.
with
Okay.
these comments?
So previously I said, put it in my veins. This, I want you to keep it out of my veins. I mean, I understand the point that he was trying to make, though he made it sloppily, but the part about the low scale, the what do you call it, the workers without the academic training to have a work from home job. Let's put that aside for a second. What he's in effect telling New Yorkers and people who work in New York is that hey, you know what? Health isn't that important, but what is important is that on your lunch break or before or after work, you're running around the city making purchases. And that's how we are going to get through the pandemic, which obviously couldn't be further from sensical. So but I mean, that's how a lot of our federal, state, city leaders are thinking. But what I don't get 2 years, almost 3 years into this, is how they're not connecting the fact that keeping the economy humming or prioritizing that above public health just prolongs this fucking thing that we're in, and we keep going in circles. But if I wonder what would happen if big city mayors, little city mayors, medium city mayors, municipal workers, if they had the foresight to band together and lobby Congress, hey, we need some more relief because we're going to need relief so that workers can safely stay home from work and clear the virus from their systems. We're going to need more money to temporarily arm school systems with the equipment to give students for distance learning for a moment. We're not saying forever, but if you really want things to go back to normal, we're going to need the interventions from the state to be able to resource people for time to stay home so that we can do that. But that's off the table. So now we're just browbeating we're pitting worker against worker, and blaming them for the devastation caused to one another. And it drives me crazy because at this point we know better. But Adams wasn't put on the scene in New York to be a sensical figure. He was there to protect the capital interests present in New York, and that's exactly what he's doing. But this is nuts.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I don't know if Nomiki, if we lost her for a second, but and say that it doesn't help that the president himself, right? This is supposed to be a new administration, a new approach to COVID. 6 months in, or even 3 months in, people were like, "All right, looks like we're doing things a little bit different." We passed the American Rescue's plan, and now we are just getting Trumpism with a capital D Democrat next to it, right? This is, and so this week it's jumped off with Biden saying this is not a federal problem to solve. This is on the states.
That's right.
So of course you got Eric Adams up there, and yeah, he sounds like a total clown, and it is so pathetic that we're basically, like you said, pitting workers against one another. But at the same time, from the top of the leadership of the party, that's what it is. It's
that's right.
Everybody, sort of survival of the fittest type shit.
Right.
And in terms of the New York's economy, it is incredible because after I lived there for a while, and you go back and you're like, oh, this city runs on exploitation. That's all it does. It is just a city. It's like, oh, the city that never sleeps. Oh yeah, the city that is not allowed to sleep because people
or allow their workers to sleep.
Right, exactly. They're on burning both ends of the candle here. And so it's just like, okay, but isn't there another model for New York? And it is sad, someone who my God, thank God he's not mayor. But even the attractiveness of someone like Yang saying, New Yorkers deserve a universal basic income.
Right.
That was attractive for a reason. People are hustling and struggling in that city.
There was also a press conference he did. It was either the day before this or 2 days before that I don't know. I might have had an aneurysm because what are we doing? He got up to the lectern and he was like, finally the city of New York has a mayor with swagger. That means something for the people of New York. I'm sorry, but swagger is not, I guess, but also what about governance? I don't give a fuck about your swagger, dog. Get out of here.
When a mayor has swagger, the city has swagger. We've allowed people to beat us down so much that all we did was wallow in COVID. That's all we did. And we no longer believed. This is a city of swagger. This is a city of resiliency. And all of these messages out there of what is going to happen, we're going to survive.
And you know what else that stock clerk, what else the office workers should be saying about this? What he should have said is we really need the federal government to understand that we need some income support, some temporary income supports for people who work outside of the home, because what I need people to understand is that if you are able to work from home and you're still out and about, breathing other people's air, that is endangering the lives of that stock clerk and endangering their ability to continue to earn a living. So that's why I need everyone to understand that we're in this together. Take it to the top where the solutions, where the actual relief is. Don't filter it down to some internecine kind of infighting between workers who work from home and workers who cannot. That's
no, yeah, it's utter BS. It is this weird trickle down theory of a city's
public
economy.
Health.
Right? Yeah. And to say nothing of public health, which he didn't. So it's I guess his shirt is doing the heavy lifting when it comes to public health, because he was not talking about the safety of those stock clerks. He's not talking about the safety of the so-called unskilled workers, which honestly, saying unskilled is just like in the year
That's the
2021.
height of disrespect.
Yeah, and it's like don't say that anymore. Like stop saying that. It's something that maybe politicians 10 years ago was okay to say, if ever it was okay to say. It's definitely not okay to say now. You can like show there is a hell of a lot of skill in being a line cook.
That's right. And if it were so unskilled, the whole of society would not depend on their labor to function. So maybe not. Like maybe don't do that, Mr. Adams. He did have an interesting, though I'm cynical and cautious, he did have an interesting announcement or wishful declaration this week about wanting New Yorkers to have a 3-day work week. Do we have that clip, David?
Could 2022 be the year?
New York's Mayor Eric Adams is proposing a 3-day work week. That, he thinks, will get people back to New York City offices. And he wants this program done, completed within the next 3 weeks. Man of action.
So I have questions, and full transparency, I haven't read closely on this, so I have no idea what the contours of this are supposed to be. But what power does he have to jawbone businesses, private or public agencies, private businesses or public agencies, to like instituting a 3-day work week when, as you said previously, like New York is just a 24-hour labor hustle that everyone is exploited under? You understand what I'm saying? Like what's going on here? What's the thought process?
He's kind of like, it's like he's a new mayor and he thinks that it comes with like a magic wand and he just like waves it around, and like his police officers police homeless people in the subway, and then his stock clerks get back to work, and then his blue collar or white collar workers stop working from home. Like I don't know what he thinks this is, but you do need a certain amount of buy-in. Look, I'm all in favor of a 3-day work week. I love that. I love it even more than I love a 4-day work week. Shit, let's go. I mean, I thought we were talking about 4, but 3 is great. But yeah, are you meeting with business leaders? Are you meeting with even local business? Like, is there any money to support mom and pop shops who you just got done talking about are struggling? Are you going to support them in their efforts to help workers have a 3-day work week? Like, and again, let's be real about who it sounds like he's talking about, right? It's very clear that the line cooks and the stock workers and those people are over here, and the homeless people, they're over here. But the real people, the ones with full autonomy, those are the white collar workers, the office workers. Like that's who he's talking about, right? That's what he's saying. Like, stop staying at home with your kids, go into the office. That's what he's saying. So it's like, okay, 3-day work week, but for who? Because it's sure not going to start with city employees. That's not the proposal. I mean, I will eat my words if he says, "Oh yeah, all city employees 3-day work week."
Exactly. But and it's also like, again, if the only reason you're trying to contrive this 3-day work week scheme, which I'm with you, of course, I stand a 3-day work week. Let's keep those numbers going down. Actually, let's abolish work. But if your only reason for suggesting that is to get people back in the office again, like during the height of COVID, which we don't know where the top of this is. That's only prolonging the thing that you've been bitching about, and in a roundabout way, only prolonging the suffering of those that work outside of the home. So again, it's just like, do the difficult thing. Put all of your political capital into doing the difficult thing, so that the symptoms of how we're in this public health crisis, this kind of economic crisis, so those things get straightened out over the long term, and not interfered with or disrupted continually. But like, he's clearly the new mayor, and I think this speaks to his personality generally, is like, I'm gonna say something really big and get headlines and then do nothing. And I'm just gonna kind of like throw everything against a wall. We're gonna blue sky this mayorship. And whatever. It was a test run. And then we're gonna vibe and then we're just how far that takes us with my swagger. And then I'm gonna call the cops on somebody, which he did the first day in office. He goes to a subway platform, and yes, there was a fight that broke out, like, and he could see it, but he calls 911. And that to me
it just bodes horribly for the rest of this term.
Correct.
And not to get too much on this, Janelle, but you live in San Francisco. I used to live in San Francisco. We have ranked choice voting in that city as well. I am a huge proponent of ranked choice voting.
Yep.
That being said, the left and progressives have to get smarter about who and how we're running within that system, right? Because in this case, there were way too many people running for mayor in New York. And the left needed to coalesce around one or two, as ranked choice voting allows you to, and that wasn't happening. Like, I always say this, but we almost defeated London Breed in San Francisco. London Breed, again, very pro-cop, very pro-gentrification, very, tech industry, let's roll over for them. She's the worst. And we narrowly lost, but we almost got Mark Leno, and Mark Leno paired with Jane Kim. They worked together. Jane Kim, obviously from the Senator Sanders campaign.
That's right.
I'm sure, Janelle, you've interfaced with her. So
I've interviewed her. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm sure Nomiki, I would love to hear her response to this too. But again, we talked about how she's Carmen Sandiego. She's all over the place. But ranked choice voting comes into this. Oh God, this is the footage of him calling the cops.
What a narc. Like, get out of here. What do you think people are going to do in the absence of like sound leadership, in the vacuum that leaves in terms of like organizing people's lives or giving people something, some semblance of like sensical leadership to rest on, like that results in interpersonal aggression and confusion and frustration. Like what, like you're being elected and being a dipshit this is a direct response to that. Like, New Yorkers are fed up. Like, take this as a moment to reflect maybe and not call the cops on people who are just
Also, you're a former cop and you're supposedly the new mayor with swagger. Go down there, bro. Go there.
That's right.
Say hello. Introduce yourself. Right. De-escalate. Show us what police can do. Or are you afraid because you don't have a weapon on you? I don't know, but it doesn't look good.
Big Karen vibes. Yeah.
Oh my God. The most Karen vibes.
That's right.
How are you going to be a Karen on your first day in office? But okay, so we're co-hosting this show. I love it. Yes. Because Congress actually has also introduced a shortening of the work week, but I think they seem a little more intentional and serious about this one.
I don't know. Let's watch the clip.
Okay. I think we've got a clip discussing it.
Could 2022 be the year the 4-day work week becomes a reality? Well, the idea has been gaining more and more support. As Richard Giacobas explains, some members of Congress even getting behind it.
We've all had those days, endless hours of nonstop work, be it your desk, on a phone, in a meeting, Monday through Friday.
I work 13 and a half hours a day, depending on whichever schedule I'm working.
Lavita Grubbs is a nurse who sometimes works 6 days a week just to make a living without enough vacation time.
Yeah, it's exhausting, but I need the extra cash during this time.
But what if Lavita could have a 4-day work week? It could one day become reality. Progressives in Congress are now pushing for a 32-hour work week, arguing that it works in countries like Japan and Ireland. California Congressman Mark Takano, a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, introduced the 32-hour work week act in July. The caucus has now formally endorsed the bill.
The overwhelming majority of businesses think that business is done on a 5-day work week. Flipping to 4 would be a challenge.
Operations Inc. CEO David Lewis has an HR company based in Connecticut with more than 150 employees. He says although it's doable, a 4-day work week could pose a scheduling conflict.
But you have to have some creative scheduling. You've got to have some overlap. So maybe people have Mondays off and some people have Fridays off.
For Lavita, though, she just wants a break.
Yes, to 4 days, just to 3 days.
And while those progressive members of Congress push for that bill, the House of Representatives still needs to bring it up for a majority vote before it heads to the Senate for final approval, possibly paving the way for a 3-day weekend someday.
Oh, that's adorable.
I'm going to let you take it first because I might just start spitting nails, but go for it.
Well, first of all, the segment just on a news perspective is apples and oranges when it comes to interviewing a nurse in the height of another variant surge, compared to a tech worker, right? Or someone who can potentially work from home, is not dealing with folks every single day. Correct. So just putting that out there. I mean, one thing I've been reading about recently, though, is a lot of the staffing shortages that are coming from hospitals are on the hospitals, right? These are hospital administrators squeezing as much as they can out of overworked nurses and other staff members, and they need to stop. And there's been nothing, just because we don't have oversight, because again, we don't have single payer. And my God, if we ever did, there is no oversight. So hospitals, these are the same fools who buy a piece of equipment that costs whatever, $500 million, so they can use it once every month and charge you $500 million for something that you probably didn't even need, so they are bad faith. They are not good people. And of course they're going to exploit their own workers. Let's just put that aside. But yeah, Janelle, take the rest.
I mean, color me purple and call me a goddamn mongoose, but you're trying to tell me that I'm supposed to put my faith in a Congress that has done the Lucy and the football trick over the past year more times than I can count. And these people did that with a $15 minimum wage that would directly impact the capital owners, the capital class. But they're going to go along with a 4-day work week. That I'm supposed to believe that, and I'm supposed to get excited about that. Get out of here. Of course, everyone would like a 4-day work week, but of course, the Commerce Club isn't going to allow that. So let's not talk about that. People are already exhausted. People are already tired. What people need, in addition to a 4-day work week, is paid time off guaranteed for everyone, so that people like this nurse in the clip aren't just running on fumes. They're like, who's there to look after her and her life? Everyone, she's just expected to throw herself and sacrifice herself for a system that at the end of the day, when her body breaks down, poor thing, who's going to be there to take care of her? Who's going to be there to pay those bills? Don't give people false hope.
That's a really good point. Yeah, if it ever happened, it'd be like an opt-in thing for, again, tech CEOs to get a tax break. So they don't have to pay as much.
Please don't think that the managers, the middle managers in tech wouldn't be able to make up that lost productivity by okay, we're a 4-day work week. Well, then you're expected to be on call 13 hours every day for those 4 days, just to get, you know what I mean? Like, if there is no,
oh yeah, we'll work you even more to the bone.
That's right.
I mean, and we started this segment off with talking about the labor movement, and look, the reason we have a 5-day work week and 2 days of rest is thanks to a militant labor movement. So I don't think we are going to get something like a 4 or 3-day work week from the top down. We're going to get it from the bottom up.
That's right.
And I definitely agree with you that focus on what is currently going on now. Paid time off is an easy way. Fuck a vaccine mandate. Let's talk about a paid sick leave mandate and a paid family leave mandate. I mean, these are the things that could greatly improve. And it's, we've turned to the dark side of this administration just in the last couple weeks. I mean, in the last 3 weeks where it was like, okay, Build Back Better not happening. And now we're in the moment of, see, the pandemic is on you. It's all on you. We can't do anything. And we're just like, it's like, oh, well, okay. All that goodwill and political capital you potentially had, you lost it. And we'll see. Maybe there's something else I don't know that's coming down the pike. Maybe voting rights are going to get passed.
Who cares? I'm a registered Democrat because I live in California. So you kind of just have to do that. But by no means am I, a stan of the party, as most leftists are not.
You could vote green, Janelle. What are you talking about?
At the top of the ticket in the presidential elections. But I'm just saying, they had better pull some rabbit out of their hat and soon. And there had better be multiple rabbits between now and November. Because I think, in a segue to the next clip, I think it is a mistake, obviously, to try and focus everyone's attention on January 6th right now and get everyone in a lather about that at the expense of having a cogent plan for COVID, which I didn't even look at the numbers today, but we're close to 1 million new cases a day. So like, and that's affecting everything, and everyone feels crazy. Everyone feels insane. So I'm not saying January 6th wasn't important, but
what are you for? But what are we pushing for? You know, because
what are we showing what are we handling with any sort of competence or capability? Like, don't emotionally manipulate me about the thing that happened last year when right now you're failing me right now.
Sure. And especially when the Republican Party is still so beholden to Trump. And of course, we have to talk about Ted Cruz's last stand. Very short-lived last stand. Whoa. Yeah. So here's what he was saying this week on the anniversary of January 6th in the Senate chamber.
Anniversary this week, and it is an anniversary of a violent terrorist attack on the Capitol, where we saw the men and women of law enforcement demonstrate incredible courage, incredible bravery, risk their lives to defend the men and women who serve in this Capitol. We are grateful for that courage. We appreciate the selfless sacrifice of the men and women who keep us safe.
Oh, it's now, Francesca, you tell me what your thoughts are on this, but it is really fascinating to me to see, dyed-in-the-wool Republicans be kind of put between a rock and a hard place with, on one hand, trying to distance themselves from the attacks of January 6th, but also do it in a way that kind of reinforces their loyalty or fidelity to law enforcement. Like that's like a tricky, tightrope act that's fascinating to watch. But what do you think?
Well, and you can't walk it. Like, that's what they've been trying to do this whole time. They've been trying to thread the needle of Blue Lives Matter, but also I'm going to smack you police officer, over the head with this American flag or this Blue Lives Matter flag. Like, you can't square that at all. It's utter hypocrisy. Ted Cruz was about to vote to not certify the electoral ballot. So get the fuck out of here, obviously, with that. But like, good on him. I mean, I was surprised when I saw this. I was like, oh, okay, you said the T word. He called them terrorists. He, showed some sort of remorse. And like clockwork, because Tucker Carlson called him out that night and said, what are you doing? Yeah. This is what happened the very next night on Tucker Carlson's show.
That's right.
Against cops, and you and I both agree, if you commit violence against cops, you should go to jail.
Yeah, but you're not a terrorist. You're not. You're a guy who assaulted a cop. Okay, so there's a legal difference, as you well know better than I do, since you were actually in the running for the Supreme Court. And there's a moral difference between a guy.
But Tucker, the reason I use that word is for a decade I've used that word for people that violently assault cops. I use that word all in 2020 for the Antifa and BLM terrorists that assaulted cops and firebombed police cars. But I agree, it was a mistake to use the word yesterday because the Democrats and the corporate media have so politicized it. They're trying to paint everyone as a terrorist, and it's a lie. Exactly. And by the way, I've spoken out vocally against your exchange you just had. They want to paint us as Nazis. Yes,
I know, it's scary.
That is what they're trying to do. And I'm the one leading the fight in the Senate against this garbage. And it's what I have been doing, and it's what I'll continue doing.
Well, I appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you.
You know what? You can almost hear Ted Cruz's nuts in a vice grip with how high his voice was trying to plead his case.
Ooh, Tucker. And this wasn't even the best part, which it starts off Tucker saying, so you texted me last night because you didn't like my segment and I had you on now. And Ted Cruz launches into I apologize. I misspoke.
Your episode last night, I sent you a text shortly thereafter and said, listen, I'd like to go on because the way I phrased things yesterday, it was sloppy and it was frankly dumb. And
I don't buy that. Whoa. I don't buy that. Look, I've known you a long time, since before you went to the Senate. You were a Supreme Court contender. You take words as seriously as any man who's ever served in the Senate. And every word you repeated that phrase. I do not believe that you used that accidentally. I just don't.
So, Tucker, as a result of my sloppy phrasing, it's caused a lot of people to misunderstand what I meant. Let me tell you what I meant to say. What I was referring to are the limited number of people who engaged in violent attacks against police officers. Now, I think you and I both agree that if you assault a police officer, you should go to jail. That's who I was talking about. And the reason the phrasing was sloppy is I have talked dozens, if not hundreds of times. I've drawn a distinction. I wasn't saying that the thousands of peaceful protesters supporting Donald Trump are somehow terrorists. I wasn't saying the millions of patriots across the country supporting President Trump are terrorists. And that's what a lot of people have misunderstood that comment.
Wait a second, but wait, but hold on. What you just said doesn't make sense. So if somebody assaults a cop, he should be charged and go to jail. I couldn't agree more. We have said that for years. But that person's still not a terrorist. How many people have been charged with terrorism on January 6th? Like, why'd you use that word? You're playing into the other side's characterization that, as Joe Kent just explained, allows them to define an entire population as foreign combatants. And you know that. So why'd you do it?
So, Tucker, let me answer you directly. The reason I use that word, for a decade, I have referred to people who violently assault police officers as terrorists. I've done so over and over and over again. If you look at all the assaults we've seen across the country, I've called that terrorism over and over again. That being said, Tucker, I agree with you. It was a mistake to say that yesterday. And the reason is what you just said, which is we've now had a year of Democrats in the media twisting words and trying to say that all of us are terrorists, trying to say you're a terrorist, I'm a terrorist. And so, look, I don't like people who assault cops. And I stand up and defend cops. And the reason I use...
So they didn't get into the, like, is it a terrorist? Is it not? I have thoughts about calling literally everyone a terrorist.
Right.
But I do think this is white supremacist extremist violence.
Sure.
You can call that terrorism. I don't honestly think I do think it's semantics. So, but the real thing is the heel turn, Janelle.
Yeah.
Like we saw this. I was there at the RNC in 2016. He says, you should vote your heart. Ted Cruz says, don't vote for Donald Trump, vote your heart. And everyone's like, oh, boo.
Right.
And he, of course, ends up endorsing Donald Trump.
That's right.
Heel
Like
turn completely, just like the lapdog he is. And look, I hate the term cuck. I think it's so stupid. It's corny. It's like for like weird, 4chan, 8chan,
correct.
Trolls. However, no one exhibits cuck behavior more than Ted Cruz. Right. It just he oozes it.
It's god tier cuck. And it's like this is so interesting because I mean what he's doing is tacitly saying like, or what Tucker is arguing, like absolutely invalidates some of his tits being on fire in the post-Floyd era and the demonstrations of 2020. So it's like, which is it? Where now we know that there's not going to be any consistency here because it's like, no, when these people do this thing, it's righteous, it's necessary, it's okay. These are, defenders of freedom or whatever the fuck they call it. But, when these people do now, that's scary. Like they really hate the cops and they hate the cops for reasons that they shouldn't. So like those people are terrorists. And it's like, which one is it? But, there'll be no consistency from either of these. But yeah, Ted Cruz.
It's funny because
and it's hilarious to watch.
Yeah. And you know what? Look, Ted, just stand by your own statement. Just
stand up, my man.
Just stand up for yourself. I'm serious about that. Like, I hate Ted Cruz. I want the entire Republican Party to, go into the dumpster fire of history. And I think it's headed there. But at the same time, I'm like, I need a little entertainment as it goes there, right? and I think, look, you've got Liz Cheney. Again, I'm not a fan of the Cheneys, but she has been sticking her neck out. Ted Cruz attempts to do the same, gets called out for it, and it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, how dare I make a brand that isn't Trumpism? Like,
that's right.
Oh man, if you're gonna go for it, you grew out your beard. Now grow a pair of balls.
That's right. But this isn't the first time that he's had to like reverse and kind of like, kowtow. Remember like last year during the energy crisis in Texas that had everyone freezing and he was like on his way to Cancun, something with his family. And basically he was bullied into coming back. Like, you need to help out. And, like the piece of shit he did comes, crawling back in just enough time to have some good photo ops. But like this guy, He's he's not as sharp politically as he once was, but I guess I don't know.
Yeah, or as he imagines himself to be, right?
Correct.
Like,
but I mean, he does have staying power, unfortunately. But
yeah, he's in the Senate. They all have staying power. They're fucking super glued to those seats.
That's right.
You know, Dianne Feinstein is literally she's entombed. She is entombed and super glued to that seat.
That's right. That's right.
But look, if you're MAGA, if you're like diehard MAGA, you hate Ted Cruz because he crossed your boy one too many times.
That's right.
He said it multiple times, and here he is again. Calling you and your so-called patriots terrorists.
That's right.
So in my mind, he's never going to get in with the MAGA crowd ever. He's never going to
try though. He'll make the good college effort. He'll try.
He's going to try, but it will never work for him. It's like, buddy, pick a lane. Do what Paul Ryan is doing, which is sleeping upside down in a cave, waiting for Trump to die so he can emerge and like reassert himself and become, run for president and win and be like, I was asleep this whole time.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know.
Was there an
anything
insurrection?
That was going on. That's right.
Like every week, I'm like, where's Paul Ryan? Where is he? What is he planning?
That's right. When is he going to emerge?
Oh my God. Shall we kick it back to Nomiki?
I think so. Nome, take it away.
I don't know if you guys know, but I'm not a millionaire or a billionaire, and this show is not getting Fox News ratings. We don't have Fox News advertisers. That's called independent media. And even in independent media, there are hierarchies. There are folks who are getting ads from big sponsors. They're getting boosted by other companies. It's a complicated world we live in, but we are truly independent. We're an absolutely independent show. We do this show on a shoestring budget because we know what it takes to get this out there. And if I were doing this for the big bucks, if our team was doing it for the big bucks, it would be different. But with that, when you take that big money, it also changes your priorities. It changes the types of stories you can share, the types of guests you can have on, the honesty and the authenticity that you can share with your audience. We are not part of that. We just decided. I mean, I have worked in the news industry, in the media industry for a long time. I think almost a third of my life at this point. And I know the difference between being part of a big media empire or small media empire and how that can affect your programming. We don't let it do that. And part of the reason, actually the sole reason, is because we have patrons. We have patrons like many of you who've been supportive all along, who've joined recently, who've come in and out because, let's be real, the economy is tough. But when you go to patreon.com/The Nomiki Show, we have all different levels and we also have swag. We're going to be doing some special stuff for our patrons in the coming year. It's going to be very exciting. We have really exciting announcements after the new year. And our patrons are the first to know, and they get the extra content. They get, some of the things that we're going to be putting on. I can't tell you yet. But if you go to patreon.com/The Nomiki Show, I promise you it makes a big difference. We are a growing community. And I know I've talked about this before, but I think it's worth sharing again. There are very few media shows on the left that are solely hosted by women. It is harder for women to break through the systemic barriers of these algorithms because the algorithms are really skewed towards male audiences and hosts, but the audiences are, and I think ours is probably one of the stronger, 80%, 90% male. I'm not kidding you. So it's important. This is part of that ecosystem. Google is not creating an easy pathway for a lot of people, especially people of color and women of color. And it does take a lot to put on these shows. So patrons are a big part of that. I just want to thank all of our patrons right now for being so supportive. This has been an incredible process, an experiment in media over the last few years. We're going to be doing some really exciting stuff. In the next year, we're going to be taking on fascism directly and sharing with you how to take on fascism. Because let's be real, that's what we're facing right now. These are the crises that we're dealing with. We're also going to talk more about structural barriers, what's happening with the Democrats, how we can potentially move the Democrats. It's hard, I know, and they're not really stepping up. But I think sometimes we lean on the Democrats to do things that sometimes we in our own community, we can do. It's frustrating at the federal level, but the real change right now is happening locally and at the state level. We're going to help you understand how to do that, how to take these folks on. The conservatives get it. The Steve Bannons get it. The Roger Stones got it. They've been doing it for half a century at least. and they learned from the previous guys, like the Roy Cohns of the world. So why can't we? We got to think outside the box. And that's what we're going to be giving you on this show. We're not going to be fighting with other commentators. We're not going to be taking on the leftists in the House. We are going to be helping you understand how to build. That is what this is about. We don't have a lot of time. 11 months till elections. And that's why it's so important for patrons like you to be part of this community. We're so grateful to you. And you can join us at patreon.com/The Nomiki Show. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. As always, stay in solidarity and check us out on Rockfin. We do TNS Live. We start off here on youtube.com/The Nomiki Show. And for you patrons and everybody else listening, meet us over on Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern. We do an extensive interview one-on-one with some of our favorite guests. We get into a lot of issues, a much deeper dive on those issues. Rockfin.com/Nomiki. And of course, you can meet us on YouTube too and move over there. In the meantime, stay in solidarity and have a nice weekend.
The Nomiki Show. Clash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed, deep state, fake fed. Everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki Show.